of the more than 400 American military aircraft parked on the island of Oahu that Sunday morning, almost none of them rose to meet the attack. They were destroyed or shot up where they sat, lined wingtip to wingtip on open ground, because the general in charge feared a saboteur on the island more than he feared anything coming from the sea. Across the entire raid, 8 Army pilots clawed their way into the air. 2 of them had spent the whole night at a card table and had not slept at all. Their names were George Welch and Kenneth Taylor. Both were second lieutenants in the 47th Pursuit Squadron, new to fighters, 23 and 21 years old. The night before had been a Saturday. There was a dance at the officers' club at Wheeler Field, and after the dance there was a poker game that ran some distance away and did not stop. By the gray hours of December 7th, the winner of the last hand was raking in his money, and the 2 pilots were arguing the merits of driving down for an early swim. Then the noise reached them. Taylor remembered it as distant gunfire that did not sound like any drill he knew. Neither of them had been to bed. They were still in the trousers of the evening clothes they had danced in. Their squadron was not even at Wheeler. Late in November, the 47th had been sent 10 miles up the coast to a rough grass strip at Haleiwa on the northwest shoulder of the island to shoot gunnery. Those few miles up the coast are why their fighters were not sitting in the neat rows the attackers were strafing into scrap. The planes at Haleiwa were on a dirt landing ground that nobody had bombed and nobody was watching. Taylor reached a telephone and called the strip and told the ground crews to fuel and arm 2 P-40s and have them turning when he got there. Then the 2 of them threw themselves into Taylor's car and drove for the coast. They covered the distance at something close to 100 miles an hour on a 2-lane road, and at least one Japanese fighter found them on it, machine gun rounds throwing up dirt along the verge as the car ran flat out. Neither man was hit. They reached Haleiwa, found the strip untouched, and found 2 Curtiss P-40B Tomahawks waiting with the engines warm. The planes were not ready for a fight. There had been no time to load the heavier guns. Each Tomahawk had its rifle caliber 30 caliber machine guns charged and nothing else, and on Welch's aircraft, one of the 4 would not fire at all. They took off anyway, without orders, without any picture of what was above them, into a sky that held something on the order of 300 enemy aircraft. They climbed toward the smoke. Near the marine field at Iwa, they came on a string of Japanese dive bombers, working the airstrip over, nose down and pulling out and coming around again, because nothing on the ground was shooting back. Welch took one from behind and put it into the ground on his first pass. Taylor took another a moment later. Then a rear gunner caught Welch as he turned for a third, and rounds walked across the P-40, and he peeled off into a cloud to see whether the engine would keep running. It kept running, so he came back out and went looking again. Most people won't look this story up on their own. That's the entire reason this channel exists. Subscribe if you want to keep going, because there is more of it, and the part nobody tells comes next. They ran their ammunition dry and turned for Wheeler, the closer field, to reload, which set them down in the middle of where the bombs were. By the time they were on the ground, a bullet had already found Taylor. It had come through the side of his cockpit in the fighting, passed within an inch of his head, and burst inside the small space, driving fragments into his arm and his leg. He was bleeding, and he was still flying. On the ground at Wheeler, a senior officer found Taylor sitting in a fueled aircraft with blood on him, and chose that moment to deliver a lecture on the subject of pilots who take off without authorization. The lecture was still going when the second wave came over the field. Both men were already strapped in. Both opened their throttles into a strafing run that was landing all around them, and Taylor's wheels were barely up when he clipped a line of ammunition carts on the edge of the field. He was airborne anyway, climbing into a formation whose edges he could not see, when a Japanese plane slid in behind him and opened fire. Welch had stayed in the area. He saw the plane on Taylor's tail, dropped onto it and shot it down, which broke the attack and let Taylor haul up and get clear. That was Welch's third of the day, and Taylor, wounded, climbed back into it and went after anything he could reach before his guns ran dry again, while Welch came around once more over Iwa and took a 4th. By the time they landed for the last time, the sky over Oahu was empty. The strike had turned for its carriers and left the harbor burning behind it. They were not the only ones who got up, and the list is worth saying out loud because it is short. Philip Rasmussen took off from Wheeler in an obsolete P-36, Still in his pajamas, shot down a Zero and brought the machine home with its rudder, brakes, and tail wheels shot away and better than 500 holes in it. Lewis Sanders and Harry Brown got airborne in the same handful of older fighters. Gordon Sterling Jr. went up in that fight and did not come back down. And at Bellows Field, a lieutenant was killed on his takeoff roll before his wheels ever left the grass. 8 men reached the air. 6 of them put a hit on an enemy plane, and 1 of them died doing it. Welch and Taylor accounted for the largest share, and here the record stops agreeing with itself. The individual victory credits come to 6 between them, 4 for Welch and 2 for Taylor. The official tally of the morning split 7 kills to the pair, 4 on the first sortie and 3 on the second. And that figure of 7 is the one the Army carried forward and the one most histories repeat. Asked about it under oath before a congressional committee, Taylor would say only that he knew for certain he got 2 and perhaps more, and could not be sure in the smoke. Welch told a friend his own number felt more like 8, with the extra ones lost over open water where no one could confirm them. The 2 counts were tabulated by different hands and never reconciled, and they never will be. What is not in dispute is that Welch is generally credited with the first air-to-air kill an American scored against the Japanese in the whole war. He got it a few minutes ahead of Taylor, which means the 2 friends from the card table opened the United States air war in the Pacific between them, inside a single half hour, in borrowed planes that were half-armed. The Army did not quite know what to do with that. The head of the Army Air Forces, Henry Arnold, put both men in for the Medal of Honor. The recommendation went up the chain and came back down as a Distinguished Service Cross apiece, the Army's second highest decoration, and the first 2 awarded in the war. The reason given for the downgrade was that the 2 lieutenants had taken off without orders. The thing that made them the only working American fighter defense of the morning was the thing the decision could not bring itself to honor at the top. Taylor got a Purple Heart on top of it for the medal in his arm. There's a detail in the paperwork that says more than the decision does. Welch's citation for the lesser medal runs about 3 times the length of any Navy Medal of Honor citation written for that same day. Someone sat down and described what he had done in full, then reached for the decoration, and Army hands a man when it has settled on not giving him the other one. Neither of them seems to have wasted much breath on it. Welch went back to the war in the South Pacific and kept flying, and a year to the day after Pearl Harbor, he shot down 3 more. He finished with 16 confirmed and a name as one of the best stick and rudder pilots the service had, and after the war, he became a test pilot for North American. On the 12th of October 1954, he was killed, pulling an experimental F-100A Super Sabre out of a high-speed dive that came apart around him. A man who had flown through 300 enemy aircraft on 4 working guns died in peacetime in an American jet that was supposed to be safe. Taylor stayed in. The wounds from that morning sent him home in time. The war moved on without him, and he made the service a career and retired a brigadier general in 1971, an old man who had once driven 100 miles an hour to a grass strip with a poker hand still in his head. He died in 2006. The Medal of Honor recommendation was never revisited. The 2 men who did more in the air over Oahu that morning than anyone else in an American cockpit were marked down for having done it without being told to, and the decision was left to stand, and it stands now.